Deep in the blood-soaked hold of a Canadian destroyer during the fierce combat of the Korean War, 19 severely wounded soldiers awaited salvation. The ship's trauma surgeon stood over them, scalpel in hand, projecting an aura of absolute life-saving authority. He commanded the chaotic room, issuing rapid-fire orders that nurses and medics followed without hesitation, placing their complete faith in his medical pedigree. Yet, the man holding their fragile lives in his unwashed hands had never attended medical school, never completed a surgical residency, and possessed absolutely no license to heal. This was Ferdinand Waldo Demara, a man who would soon be known globally as the Great Imposter. Operating under the stolen credentials of a real physician named Dr. Joseph Keir, Demara had effortlessly infiltrated the highly regulated ranks of the Royal Canadian Navy. His primary weapon was not a flawlessly forged signature, but a profound, almost predatory understanding of human psychology and the blind spots inherent in institutional trust. He knew that people rarely question a confident man in a uniform, especially when they desperately need him to be exactly who he claims to be. The realization of this deception, once it finally surfaced, would shatter the foundation of every organization he touched. To entrust a human life to a naval surgeon is the ultimate act of vulnerability, an implicit contract built on the absolute assurance of rigorous vetting and undeniable expertise. When that sacred contract is exposed as a total fabrication, the resulting psychological trauma extends far beyond the operating table. It poisons the well of public faith, leaving a lingering, corrosive paranoia in the minds of those who suddenly realize they were manipulated by a phantom. As the severe casualties mounted on the HMCS Cayuga, Demara faced the ultimate terrifying test of his fabricated reality. He retreated briefly to his private quarters, frantically speed-reading a textbook on general surgery while wounded men bled out on the steel deck above him. The sheer audacity of returning to the operating room, armed only with a photographic memory and a stolen identity, defies basic moral comprehension. He plunged his hands into the open chest cavities of dying men, removing jagged shrapnel and suturing major arteries with a chilling, sociopathic calm. Miraculously, not a single soldier died under his blade during that harrowing deployment. This undeniable success created a profound ethical paradox that continues to baffle historians, ethicists, and psychologists alike. The outcome was undeniably heroic, yet the foundation was entirely fraudulent, an intricate web of fake identities that mocked the very concept of merit and hard-earned skill. The soldiers survived their physical wounds, but the sanctity of the medical profession had been profoundly and permanently violated. His eventual downfall arrived not through catastrophic medical malpractice, but through the fatal flaw of his own spectacular success. The Canadian press, desperate for a hero amid a grueling war, published glowing front-page accounts of the miracle doctor at sea, complete with photographs of the man they believed to be Dr. Sear. Thousands of miles away, the mother of the actual Joseph Sear saw the newspaper and immediately recognized the face of a total stranger. The fragile illusion, sustained by sheer nerve and stolen documents, instantly evaporated under the harsh light of public scrutiny. The fallout within the military bureaucracy was swift, silent, and deeply humiliating. Rather than face the catastrophic public spectacle of admitting a high school dropout had performed major thoracic surgery on their watch, the military quietly discharged him without pressing criminal charges. This silent dismissal highlights a terrifying reality about systemic vulnerabilities and the self-preservation instincts of powerful groups. Institutions, terrified of devastating reputational damage, often sweep profound betrayals under the rug, inadvertently allowing the perpetrator to vanish into the shadows and strike again. The echoes of that maritime manipulation lingered, but they did not deter him from seeking his next stage. Ferdinand did not retreat into quiet obscurity. Instead, he sought out entirely new avenues for his compulsive, relentless deception. The drive to impersonate was not merely about financial gain or simple thrill-seeking. It was a deeply ingrained psychological pathology. He possessed an insatiable hunger for the respect, adoration, and authority that his true self, Waldo, could never organically command in the real world. He soon resurfaced within the quiet, ascetic walls of a rural monastery, transforming himself into a devout Benedictine monk. Here, the required currency was not medical expertise, but spiritual purity, theological knowledge, and unquestioning obedience. He preyed upon the foundational trust of a deeply religious community, exploiting their inherent belief in redemption and the fundamental goodness of strangers. The brothers welcomed him into their most sacred spaces, completely unaware that their newest spiritual confidant was a seasoned predator of institutional blind spots. The betrayal felt by the monks upon his inevitable departure was intensely personal and spiritually devastating. Affinity fraud, a term used when a deceiver exploits the trust of a specific close-knit demographic or religious group, leaves a uniquely painful psychological scar. It makes the victims question their own spiritual discernment, twisting their deeply held faith into a source of profound internal shame. They had bared their souls and confessed their sins to a man who was merely playing a role, a hollow vessel echoing their own beliefs back at them for his own amusement. The chameleon soon discarded his monastic robes for the tweed jacket of a respected college professor, and later the imposing authoritarian uniform of a maximum security prison warden in Texas. In each dramatic reinvention, Demara utilized the exact same chilling methodology to bypass security measures. He identified complex institutions desperate for strong authority figures, forged the necessary academic transcripts, and slipped seamlessly into the power vacuum. As a warden, he was entrusted with the lives, discipline, and rehabilitation of desperate men, a position of absolute, unchecked power obtained through absolute fraud. Once again, his tenure in the brutal prison system presented a disturbing, almost incomprehensible moral ambiguity. He instituted surprisingly progressive reforms, significantly improving the living conditions for the inmates and earning the genuine respect of his heavily armed staff. This forces a deeply uncomfortable reckoning with the true nature of capability versus credential in our society. If a man can successfully manage a violent penitentiary and enact positive, lasting change, does the fraudulent origin of his authority still matter? The answer, buried beneath the surface of his apparent administrative successes, is a resounding yes. The damage inflicted by the Great Imposter was not always physical or financial, but it was profoundly corrosive to the fragile social contract that holds modern society together. Every time he successfully faked his way into a position of immense power, he devalued the genuine sacrifice, grueling education, and ethical commitment of those who had rightfully earned their place. He turned the very concept of expertise into a cynical, elaborate punchline. Those early deceptions at sea had set a dangerous precedent, proving to him time and again that the world was incredibly eager to be fooled. Investigators who later tracked his decades-long spree across North America noted a highly consistent pattern of psychological manipulation. He engaged in a form of ambient gaslighting, projecting such overwhelming, unshakable confidence that anyone who dared question him felt irrational for doubting his authenticity. He weaponized the polite reluctance of civilized society to confront a seemingly credentialed, highly respected professional. For the actual individuals whose identities he callously stole, the nightmare was deeply personal, legally complicated, and incredibly isolating. The real Dr. Joseph Sear, a man who had dedicated years of his life to legitimate medical study, found his good name forever tethered to a bizarre global scandal. The theft of a professional identity is the theft of a lifetime of hard work, a profound violation that strips the victim of their agency and forces them to constantly prove their own existence to suspicious authorities. It is a quiet, bureaucratic violence that leaves lasting emotional wreckage long after the imposter has moved on. As the years wore on, the crushing weight of 1,000 fake identities began to suffocate the man buried beneath them. Ferdinand Demara grew older, his physical appearance changing, making it significantly harder to slip into new, youthful roles or charm his way past skeptical human resources departments. The intoxicating thrill of the con faded into a dull ache, replaced by the exhausting reality of constantly looking over his shoulder, waiting for the inevitable tap of unmasking. He became a tragic prisoner of his own labyrinthine lies, eventually unable to remember where the falsehoods ended and his true self began. His eventual capture, public exposure, and brief media notoriety did little to heal the deep wounds he had inflicted on the countless institutions he compromised. Hospitals, universities, military branches, and government agencies were forced into a painful, highly public period of self-reflection. They began implementing rigorous background checks, fingerprinting, and credential verification processes that fundamentally altered the landscape of employment. The bygone era of the gentleman's agreement, of simply taking a well-dressed man at his word, was permanently eradicated by his relentless, unchecked exploitation. The haunting legacy of Ferdinand Waldo Demara serves as a dark mirror reflecting our own desperate desire to believe in the extraordinary. He understood on a primal level that we are all, to some degree, willing participants in our own deception, often eager to accept the comforting illusion of confident authority over the messy, complicated reality of incompetence. The true horror of his story is not just that one deeply flawed man could deceive the world so completely, but that the world was so devastatingly ready to be deceived.